Welcome to New Directions for Women, a program of the Morris County chapter of the National Organization for Women. My name is Rebecca Lubetkin, and I and the entire production crew are all members of this chapter of NOW. We're also all volunteers. Most of us have day jobs, but this is a labor of love that we've been doing for a long time. In fact, I noticed that this show is our number 230. So there are a lot of shows there that are archived at the Sophia Smith Collection in Smith College. There's the website on the screen now, and as well as available to you on YouTube right there. We have a fascinating show today. We're going to talk about towns connecting to share services. This could be in small ways, such as purchasing a piece of equipment together, and in larger ways, such as sharing police or dispatchers, all the way to actual consolidation so that the two towns become one. And we are very fortunate to have as today's guest New Jersey's leader in advancing this work, Gina Genovese, the Executive Director of Courage to Connect New Jersey. And we'll give you that website a little bit later. Gina Genovese has a very interesting background. She has been the owner of Gina's Tennis World in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey for 30 years. Are you still?
Yes, I am.
Oh, wow. So you have a day job too, right?
6 days a week.
Oh, wow. In 2005, she was elected to the Township Committee of Long Hill Township, and she served as mayor there in 2006. In 2010, Gina founded Courage to Connect New Jersey, an organization that educates the public and elected officials about municipal consolidation. Welcome,
Thank
Gina.
you, Rebecca. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm glad you are. I'd like to start by asking you a little bit about your own story. You were the owner of a small business, and then at a certain point you decided to run for Township Committee. What made you decide to run?
Well, as you said, I'm in business now 30 years, so about 20 years ago I just wanted to branch out into other areas, and I started to get involved in politics. I had a fundraiser for Howard Dean at my house in 2003, and subsequent to that I was asked to run for Township Committee, and the second time I ran I won, and the rest is history.
History, meaning you were on the committee for 1 year and then ran for mayor?
I lost the first year that I ran, and then I ran again the second year, and that's when I won a seat on the Township Committee.
And the year after you became mayor?
Yes, we have a Township Committee form of government, which means that the governing body each year elects a new mayor.
A new mayor.
So there's quite a few of those around the state where it's not elected from the people.
So and basically you do it for a year.
Yes, or you could be re-elected from the committee.
But you decided not to run again.
Yeah, I decided not to run again.
Because with your full-time job, I imagine that was like 2 full-time jobs.
Yeah, but you know, you make it work. They say if you need something done, give it to a busy person. So I don't mind it. I'm pretty much a workaholic, so it was fine for me.
But there must have been some challenges there that suggested to you that a new approach was necessary.
Well, it's really eye-opening if you go on the other side and you start to see the budgets and you start to see the services that towns are asked to deliver. And being in New Jersey, a local elected official, my experience was that you're asked about 3-4 times a day, what are you going to do about my property taxes? It's the #1 question that you get as
everybody's
a local.
mind, yeah.
It's on everybody's mind, and as soon as they hear that you're a local elected official, it comes up, and then you start to look, and that's what I did. I said, well, let me take a look at this issue and see if there's anything that can be done. And you start to see that we have 566 municipalities in New Jersey. 500
in this tiny little piece of real estate.
Yeah, the most per square mile in the country.
It could fill a corner of California, and it has more districts.
Yes,
than
more
California.
Townships. Yes, local governments. Than,
something wrong there.
Well, you start to see the redundancy, and not only that, Rebecca, they are basically mandated to offer about 80% of the same services. So then you start to see the redundancies, and my town was about 8,700 in population, Long Hill Township, which is
But isn't your town your township 3 towns?
No, it's not. It's identifiable by 3 or 4 communities. It's better known as Millington, Sterling, and Gillette, and Myersville are sections of Long Hill Township.
I see. So they're not separate municipalities.
No, and that's the interesting aspect to this, because I was asked more often if I was the mayor of Millington than I was the mayor of Long Hill. And you start to question where town identity comes from. You know, does it come from the seat of your government, or does it come from the people and the businesses and what it is in New Jersey? You know,
Right.
Millington Bank, Millington Center, that really defines the area.
The town that people think they live in.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's so interesting. How many separate school districts do we have?
There's 605 separate school
There are
districts.
even more-
There's
more
even
school
more. Well, you have
districts?
regional high schools, so you have a lot of K through 8s that are
Yeah.
sending to a regional high school. There's about 20 towns that have K through 12s with other towns that they share them. So yeah, there's
So
605.
if you wanted to create an expensive proposition, you probably couldn't do better than what we have with home rule in New Jersey.
Well,
By design.
By design, but we have that problem. Pennsylvania has that problem. They actually have 2,500 municipalities. Massachusetts, New York State. So there's a lot of states that are suffering because of this issue.
Probably the early colonial states were set up that way.
Yeah, we started out with 104 townships, and then in the 1890s, towns started to fracture off for all sorts of reasons. And it's interesting because none of those reasons are valid today. Could be because of roads, or because of rural, or because of a dry town. Could be because one man got in a room and wanted the power. Because back in 1895, women did not have the right to vote.
So traditionally, we didn't have all those school districts, all of those towns.
No, we started out with 104.
So interesting.
Yeah.
And has there been a move to consolidate before this time?
In all my studies, I came up with an 1895 New York Times article that talks about consolidating the oranges, which is really great. We start our presentation with this because it really shows you the history of how people know that this has been an issue that's been plaguing New Jersey.
For 100 years.
For 100 years. And in 1934, I actually have a speech by our Governor Moore at the time, who said the only way that we're going to ever do anything about home rule and reduce the number of municipalities is if the citizens get involved. It has to be a citizen movement. Mm-hmm. And he said that in 1934. Mm-hmm. Amazing.
And look where we are.
Yeah.
We have not moved forward. What are the least complicated services to share? Or may I ask you a question that probably precedes that? Does sharing services, do you see that as a baby step on the way to full merger, or is it also something that could exist for itself and have value?
Well, it could. That's also what's been hard is shared services, consolidation. There's many different variations. Shared services have been around for 30 or 40 years. When I was mayor in 2006, we had 15 shared services. We shared fire inspectors, health inspectors, equipment, sewer cameras. We actually consolidated our police communications at the time. It was one of the early ones in the state. But I realized that potentially could be fracturing off an already fractured structure.
So it doesn't necessarily bring you en route to consolidation?
A lot of times they fall apart. A lot of times they have to be managed. It could be, but it's not necessarily the case. And they have to be managed. They're contracts. You can contract out police. You can share the police. There aren't many shared services in the police or the Department of Public Works. And that's a big issue because those are the big ticket items in a municipal budget. They comprise usually about 75%.
It's expensive, yeah.
And so if you're not going to be able to share those items, then it's very difficult to reduce property taxes.
So what are the kinds of services that people are beginning to share today? You said when you were mayor, 8 to 10 years ago, when you were on the township committee, you were already doing 13 services. What are they initiating today that they weren't before?
I believe that local officials are much more open to it and are looking to share services. But if you share a truck, or like I said, you share a sewer camera, then you have to manage it, who's going to get it that day. It's not as easy.
Schedule it.
Yeah, it's not as easy as you think. If you have a health officer, he's there one day a week, or if you share a building inspector, they have very limited hours. So you have to just manage it. It has to be managed.
And are there services that people tend to pull back from and not want to share? Say libraries or schools or...
Yeah, but you know, we're really coming to a time, I think, as a state, where we're going to have to make some decisions. And if property taxes, we try to keep capping them and keeping them down, what you're finding is that towns are having difficulty managing under that stress, delivering the services, or they're actually going to start reducing services.
Yes.
And who wants to pay more and get less? But if we're faced with that, maybe people will start looking for alternatives and make the decisions that they need to be making.
Especially if they see success somewhere else in doing that. And you've had some successes. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, it's interesting because the first 2 years I was executive director of Courage to Connect New Jersey. Most people would say, you know, it's great what you're doing, Gina. You know, you're educating the public, and oh, that's great. But it's never going to happen in New Jersey. It's never, ever going to happen in New Jersey. Well, on November 8th, 2011, Princeton Township and Princeton Borough voted to merge. The citizens there on the fourth try voted to consolidate. And it was just wonderful because when I went back to some of those people, they actually said, Gina, I never said that to you. And I thought that that was interesting because it really is about changing consciousness. It really is about, is it possible? And that's what the Princetons did for the state of New Jersey and potentially the country. Because it's the first time that two towns that size got together and consolidated.
And how long from the first time that it was proposed to the time that they actually voted it in?
This time it took about 1.5 years. They had a study commission, and then the study commission said put it to a referendum, and then the people voted for it, and then they had the whole year of 2012 where they had joint governing body meetings.
Oh, yeah.
And what was fascinating is I went to several of them. You know, they'd say, well, what does our town do better than yours, and what does our town do better than yours? And you start to see collaboration. And now that they've come together in January 1st, 2013, they're on track to not only save money, but put back all the services that they had to cut. So it really is a success story.
They put back the services that they had to cut?
Absolutely. They cut about 18% of their staff, and they started to cut a lot of services in the last 4 or 5 years. And again, our Courage to Connect New Jersey is educational. And what we're doing is on June 5th, we're going to have a seminar where we're going to have the current mayor, the administrator, and the firm that did it just start talking to the rest of New Jersey and
about how they did it,
about how they did it, and maybe it's not so scary.
Wow. What did they have going for them before they started that was kind of shared? Or
well, they actually had 17 shared services at one point, but when they did share their services this time, there was about 13. So they did have a lot of collaboration
in joint
already.
schools?
Yes, they have a consolidated school district they have for many, many years. But they realized what direction they were going in. It's really about what direction you want your town to go in. Do you want it to start going backwards through attrition? Do you want to, lessen the services? Or do you want to have options? Do you want to make yourself sustainable? And that's the direction now that Princeton is going in.
So when you say that they're restoring some of the cuts that they had been making, and they're still saving money?
Oh, absolutely.
So they're getting what they used to have before they made cuts, and it's costing them less?
Well, they're going to save about $3.2 million.
Wow.
That's going to take a couple of years. It's not going to happen this year because they have nice steps. The police force is